Is day trading like gambling? I don't know why people get so offended or triggered when this question gets asked. I want to explain to you, I think, one of the closest things to gambling, right? When it comes down to trading, it is one of my favorite things when it comes down to like risk to reward ratios and only buying based off of that, right? This is not something that I recommend for everyone. Obviously, when it comes down to you only trading based off of risk to reward and not waiting for proper confirmation and all of the other criteria to be met, obviously it comes at a greater form of risk. That's why some people compare it to gambling. But of course, again, it's just based off of statistics and your win rate. And I really hope this video can give you a real example, or at least it could be of real value for you as I give you a real example of a trade that I took based off of risk to reward ratios, and maybe you'll understand why some people see them to be so important. Let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. One of the things that I did today is I jumped into SQQQ. A lot of you guys might have seen that trade if you're part of my LPP team. I made a little bit over $8,000 on this trade alone. I sold very early. I ended up selling based off of previous highs, so that's right around 1880 to 1890. As you can see, it hit highs of 1930. I'm not a perfect trader. I'm not here to pretend to be. As this thing became very overbought, one thing I took into consideration is that, okay, well, if you look at overall lows and current highs, that is a change of 6.3%, right? You see my little trend line tool, 6.3%. And the thing that I love about my focus is, again, this is not for everyone, but this is SQQQ, which goes up when the NASDAQ market drops. But if the NASDAQ market were to find a support level, then it can begin to recover and maybe go back to previous highs that it was previously at, right? So very quickly, from current to lows, to overall highs, that offers 1.96%. That's for QQQ, which is the single leverage ETF, or for TQQQ, right? From overall lows, if I was a perfect trader, to overall highs, this is a 5.8%. Now, what do I mean by a 5-to-1 ratio? It's literally super simple, right? We talked about this in one of our earlier videos. There's a 1-to-1 ratio, which means 1% for potential reward versus 1% for potential risk. You would have to have a 50% or greater success rate for this to be profitable long term. When it comes down to a 2-to-1 ratio, 2% upside versus 1% downside, 3% upside versus 1% downside, you get the gist, right? A 5-to-1 ratio is I'm only going to take advantage of an opportunity based off of 5% upside, and I'm only willing to risk 1%. So how does this make any sense based off of real money, right? So if you trade with $10,000, the example that I can give you is if you're willing to risk or trade with $10,000 in a perfect world, right? If you are perfectly able to make 5% and only risk 1%, which again, it's never perfect, but 5% upside on that $10,000 would be about a $500 return, right? Not bad. When it comes down to that 1% downside, every trade comes at some form of expense, and it's however it is that you manage your risk. With this 5-to-1 ratio, it would mean that with that $10,000 trade, you're willing to risk $100. So you're willing to lose potentially $100 to potentially make $500. So then therefore you can see, right? The example that I can give you on over here is when it comes down to the 5-to-1 ratio, you can literally have a 20% success rate. And as long as you focus on that 5-to-1 ratio every single time and you cut losses every single time at that 1%, it comes down to discipline and structure and consistency, right? It's very easy to talk about, very difficult to do over a long period of time. But you can be profitable with a 20% success rate. This is why, again, we talk about if you are more selective and you wait for more quality setups, again, it can be very favorable. So when looking at this, the reason I love this example today is because the 5-to-1 ratios that I see a lot of people present is based off of maybe a previous resistance that was either last week or last month, or a time that is not very relevant. I mean, a lot happens in the market on the day-to-day, right? This is based off of previous patterns. I mean, this is what I explained to our LPP team. As you can see, as NASDAQ market sold off, it was approaching previous lows. SQQQ was approaching previous highs where it got rejected at yesterday and then sold off. So it wasn't rocket science for me, right? I was looking at previous highs. So I wasn't just taking, okay, it's up and it was previously down. How much margin can it sell off? Because when this sells off, then this goes up. But I was taking previous patterns into consideration, and I was like, okay, well, SQQ had a really nice rip. It looks like now it's retesting previous resistance levels, right? The risk to reward is 5-to-1, so I'm okay with risking 1% to potentially make 5% all day, right? When people say, well, that's gambling, you're just hoping that it goes according to plan. Yeah, I'm not waiting for news. I'm not waiting for any other criteria to be met. And that's why I say, right, one of the things that I shared with my LPP team is I don't do call outs. I don't do anything like that. I shared my trade with them and I explained to them, do not copy this. This is a very risky trade. And why not be open about, if you do choose to take a trade based off of less criteria and more of just, the risk to reward is favorable, why not just be okay with saying, yeah, this is more risky. But again, if it's calculated risk, then it makes sense to you. You're an adult. You can do whatever it is that you want, right? So I think that's what's most important to me is I wanted to give you a real world example of not of a pattern that offers 5-to-1 ratios that is a week old or a month old. I mean, this literally happened today, right? We sold off. NASDAQ market sold off, and then this thing began to recover. We went back to retest previous highs. And then because we were at a potential resistance for SQQQ, because there was so much downside potential based off of today's lows on SQQQ, I saw potential on this thing being able to recover. And guess what? After all of that, after my risk to reward ratio, after waiting for confirmation of a reversal, just making sure that some criteria is being met, even after all of that, I'm still not guaranteed to win because guess what? That is why there's the 5-to-1 ratio because I still have to manage and mitigate my risk at that 1%. But I thought this would be a great example for someone that's just getting started on showing you why it's so important to have risk to reward ratios when it comes down to trading. It's based off of like your criteria. If you see that you suck at trading as of right now, and maybe you want to be a little bit more selective, right? Maybe you should focus on trades that offer a greater potential reward while risking a little bit less, right? If you're someone that sees, maybe you're a little bit more conservative, you trade stocks that are a little bit more on the bullish side, so therefore it's easier for you to make money, right? Then maybe you can choose to focus on less conservative risk to reward ratios and more of a maybe 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1, right? It doesn't matter. The idea is as long as if you're going to do something, to be consistent with it, right? And I just thought I thought it was really interesting to kind of share and give you a real world example of a real trade setup that offers a decent upside potential based off of, intraday patterns, and that is all based off of risk to reward ratios, right? It's not perfect. It all comes at some form of risk, and the risk is just your job as a trader to manage and mitigate yourself. So I hope that this video can really inspire you to not just obsess about how much money you could potentially make, but that our job as traders, if we want to see growth in this market, is to control how much money we give back, because that is the only way that we will see growth within this market. So I really do appreciate you guys' time. I hope that we're into thumbs up. If you guys have any questions, I hope that you know that you can always send me a direct message either via Discord or via Instagram, and that's going to be linked down below. And if you want the ability to join my team and watch me trade live every single day, I work with one team and one team only, and that is that second link in the description down below. I appreciate your time, and like always, let's make sure that we end the year on a green note. Take it easy, team.